In today's My Hero Academia video, we explain why and how the #1 hero from America, Star and Stripe, will definitely give All Might one of her 2 rules to make him strong again. But we also mention the one and only exception of how this could not happen. Also, only a small percentage of the people who watch our videos are actually subscribed, so if you end up liking this video, consider subscribing. Please enjoy this video, let's go! With the introduction of America's #1 hero, Star and Stripe, along with her quirk, New Order, one big question has arisen. Will Star and Stripe give All Might one of her 2 rules so that All Might can return to the battlefield one more time, in the final war against All For One? There are many indications that Star and Stripe will at least somehow be able to help All Might be useful on the battlefield again. So let's talk about it. But before we even get to that point, we need to understand who exactly Star and Stripe is. Star and Stripe is the current #1 hero of the United States of America. Many years ago, a young Star and Stripe was on her way to the Santa Monica Pier with her family when they run into the middle of a villain attack. She was terrified and prayed that at least her little sister would survive. But they were all saved by a Japanese exchange student who later became Japan's greatest hero, the symbol of peace, All Might. From that day on, she was inspired to become a hero like All Might. Considering him as her role model and with her quirk, New Order, she became the #1 hero in America. Her devotion to All Might is so strong that she immediately set out for Japan to support the fight against All For One, even though the United Nations had not yet made the final decision on International Hero 8 and ordered the heroes not to interfere in Japan's affairs. But since All Might saved her family, she has a deep admiration for him that makes his request more important than any possible restriction. She considers his hair to be a symbol of heroism, so she has even had her own hair styled in a similar manner to symbolize her devotion to All Might. Star and Stripe also admires his incredible strength. This admiration goes so far that she always applies one of the 2 rules of her quirk, New Order, to herself, which gives her superhuman strength. As a result, All For One even refers to her as the strongest woman in the world. Although she claims that she's not on the level of All Might, she's still strong and fast enough to beat the surgically enhanced Tomura Shigaraki, while he's already using All For One with 98% of his full strength. She was able to fly across the Pacific Ocean to Japan while standing on the plane. This shows that she has exceptional strength, balance and endurance. Even though her superpower is not as strong as One For All, it is still very strong and could compete with All For One if only she had a little more support from other heroes. This is important to understand when we try to determine the limits of her power. But Star and Stripe's quirk not only allows her to strengthen herself, but also manipulate her surroundings, even other people. She can even apply her power to incorporeal things, like the atmosphere. This shows that she can manipulate the laws of reality of anything and everything as much as she wants, as long as it is physically possible and also logical. For example, she cannot make the rule, "Give me the power of One For All." This is logically impossible because in order to receive this power, the current user must willingly give up on One For All by passing a piece of their DNA to the next successor. However, if she were to say something like, "Let All Might's body remember the physical power he used to have and let him use that power again," then her quirk might possibly be able to manipulate All Might's genetics so that he could regain the physical power he had in his prime without actually having One For All. It really depends on the limits of her quirk. Of course, he will not be able to use any of the quirks that Deku can use with the help of One For All, nor will he be able to communicate with the Vestiges. This is because her quirk won't be able to give All Might One For All, but only the strength he once used. Before my partner Yami continues with this video, please take a short moment to like this video. It helps us a lot. Thank you.
Most of the people who dislike the idea of All Might regaining his strength simply don't want to see All Might back in his prime, because the story of My Hero Academia is about Deku defeating All For One and not All Might defeating All For One. Here it's important to note that Deku is most likely already stronger than All Might in his prime by the time he learns to fully control One For All. Furthermore, the fusion between Shigaraki and All For One will most likely result in a much more powerful being that will be able to bypass the quirk singularity, allowing him to use all sorts of quirks without consequences. This new villain will most probably appear in the next chapter of My Hero Academia and will definitely be stronger than All Might ever was. So the excuse that All Might shouldn't become powerful again because it's not his story but Deku's doesn't work anymore, simply because the main villain is much stronger now, depending on how much more powerful All For One has become. It might even be necessary for All Might to return to his prime if the heroes are to stand any chance against All For One in the first place. Deku will still have to surpass his own limits by learning to control All For One with all the quirks in it. This would not change the main plot or Deku's position in the story, but would simply make All Might an important character in My Hero Academia again. But even if we say that All Might has no chance to get his power back, there is absolutely no reason why we shouldn't deny the fact that Star and Stripes can make him at least as strong as himself at the moment, which is already strong enough to realistically compete with Shigaraki. And if Star and Stripe ever decides to sacrifice one of her two rules to someone else to give that person some sort of power, that person can only be All Might. This is because, as we explained earlier in this video, of her immense admiration for her personal hero All Might. Imagine what she would feel if she saw him in the state he is right now. She would certainly still admire him, but she would realize that All Might wants to do more than just support the heroes. All Might wouldn't even have to mention this desire himself. Star and Stripe would sense it regardless. Without even having met All Might in person, it seems that she doesn't even know that All Might has lost all of his powers. Just the sight of Japan, all the graffitis, the signs, and also the people who have turned against the heroes and thus against All Might would make her extremely sad and angry. Seeing her spiritual master forgotten, disrespected, and discredited will naturally make her want to see him again in his prime. And since she's the one who has the power to do so, it is only logical to assume that she would do something to help All Might do his part in the final battle against All For One. By doing so, she would either sacrifice one of her two rules to All Might or maybe even give him both of her two rules at the same time. The idea that she gives All Might both rules is interesting, because that way we would get to see what Star and Stripe would look without all the muscles, which will most likely happen at some point in the story anyway. There are several ways she could use her two rules, so that she could then lose her own superpower and with it reveal what she really looks like without superhuman strength. I think revealing her true appearance is something Horikoshi plans to do, and with that she has to lose the rule she always applies on herself anyway, which makes the idea of All Might getting one of her two rules a bit more likely. However, some people in the My Hero Academia fandom believe that Star and Stripe will die in the upcoming battle against All For One. We can see the reason why people seem to believe that, because after all, she is about to face the most powerful being that has ever existed on Earth. Literally a fusion between All For One and Shigaraki, who will most likely become some sort of ultimate Nomu that can bypass the quirk singularity and thus be able to use all sorts of quirks without side effects. And thus, she has absolutely no chance of winning even if she were to use both of the rules on herself at the same time. This upcoming battle will decide if she will be able to give All Might one of her two rules. The only way the upcoming fight between Star and Stripe against All For One can end is either that All For One defeats her for good, because he will obviously be more powerful after the latest transformation, or that she can somehow escape. The possibility that Star and Stripe will die after only a few chapters without even having met her spiritual master All Might seems quite unlikely. But even if she doesn't die, she can still be defeated, and All For One could even steal her quirk. This would perfectly fit the idea that we eventually see her true appearance, because without her quirk, she can't keep her muscle firm either. All For One has talked about his desire to steal Star and Stripe's quirk, and with it created the possibility that she might actually lose her quirk in the upcoming chapters. Now that All For One has even merged with Shigaraki, part of him is already directly in contact with Star and Stripe, which means she's already directly in in danger of losing her quirk immediately. If this happens, then of course the theory that she would give All Might her second rule becomes impossible. This is the only way Star and Stripe will not sacrifice one of her two rules for her spiritual master All Might. Her admiration for him is too great for her to simply ignore the fact that she can help him become relevant again. But if a quirk were to be stolen, there is nothing she can do about it. But even if that were to be the case and she were to lose her quirk to All for One, there is still a way that All Might could get his power back. We have already made a video about it and we'll put the link in the comments below. Feel free to watch that video as well. So that's it for today, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed our video, and if you did, don't forget to smash the like button, and if you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe with the notification bell turned on. See you guys in the next video. Yami out.